Welcome to week 3 of our memoir class. And we have a very small group in person today. And we're talking about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. You may have read the description and seen the word icon. So we'll get there. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And first of all, I want to say if you sent in your email via email, you sent in your writing and or if you still plan to send it in, I'd love to share that. Please indicate when you send it in, whether it's just for me to review and comment or me to review and not say anything, or whether you'd like your classmates to be able to comment and read if you want feedback. I think that's one of the best things we can do is step aside and let other people tell us how much our story affected them. And whether you realize it or not, it does. It really does. I've been so happy to read some of your writings and to know a little bit about your stories. So to recap, so far in class, we have talked about, what have we talked about? We defined memoir, and of course, those are very personal definitions, but we can just broadly say story. We can write our story or someone else's story, and when we define that, then we can take any lens that we want. We also have so far, Joe, help me remember, we last week talked about
your writing voice.
About your voice and how would somebody know that it was you who wrote it? Maybe you don't want people to hear your voice. You can come up with a writing voice that's different than your speaking voice, of course. And if you did some of those assignments, you might have learned a little bit about what you would like your voice in writing to come across as. Today, I would like to talk about something called icons. And what do you think of when I say an icon? Do you have any thoughts on that, Joe, at all?
Mount Rushmore, the Statue of Liberty, the Washington Monument, the White House, the United States Supreme Court, the Florida League.
Okay, she has a long list. She started out with Mount Rushmore, and she's naming like huge monuments, really. And those are good examples, actually. That would not have been my answer. But when someone says Mount Rushmore or the White House, it instantly brings you a mental understanding of more than just the item, as huge as those things are. When I think of icons, I think of maybe
a smiley face.
A smiley face on, yes, or when you have your computer or phone screen and you know that little picture with the blue box with the F in it is going to take you to Facebook, and you're going to learn about all your friends and what's going on with your distant family. So icons, in the way that Joe described it and the way that I'm thinking about it, is not exactly the way that one of my favorite writers that we've talked about before, Madeleine L'Engle, wrote a whole chapter in a book, Penguins and Golden Calves. She wrote a chapter on icons, and she differentiated between the religious connotation of the word, where we might, if we had an altar set up, right? If you have a faith that you practice and you set up an altar, you might have an icon, and we're not, in that case, you wouldn't be praying to the icon, you'd be praying to what the icon represents. So that's how we want to think about icons in our writing. It's like a bigger than a metaphor. It's finding an item that points you to a bigger truth or a bigger story. It's finding your Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore was created, I'm not really a Mount Rushmore expert, but it was created to honor the men, right? And the times that they led through. And that is probably what those people who carved up a mountainside wanted, was us to remember those stories. Do you think that's about right?
I think it was also the principles and the hope that they gave to the country.
Mm-hmm.
George Washington, first president. I mean, he led the United States against the battle of, Great Britain
I
for
think
our sovereignty.
I feel bad because I think you can't hear what Joe is saying or what our class here that's assembled is saying.
Do you want me to
Sorry,
speak closer?
if you'd like to, you certainly can. So Joe was saying what she thought that, say, Mount Rushmore, if that's your icon that you're writing about, you would say it is, here she comes, she's going to join on camera since we are pretty small in library today. Everybody say hi to your classmate, Joe Barker. And I actually had not thought of the Mount Rushmore as an icon, but it does. It tells a much bigger story, that it represents a much bigger story. So, Joe, would you repeat that?
Starting with George Washington, I mean, he was the first president. He had just taken the 13 colonies against the war against Great Britain for our sovereignty. Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves, recognized that they were human beings and not chattels.
Mm-hmm.
I think Roosevelt's up there. Naturally, of course, there was the New Deal, the Great Depression, in between the world wars. I can't remember who the other one is.
So when people make that pilgrimage to see that, then they, of course, learn about all the stories behind those carved, humongous faces.
Statue of Liberty. The
Statue of Liberty. There's an icon. That's incredible. Good example. The Statue of Liberty. It is a symbol of safety, of prosperity, of friendship between countries, of our melting pot as a nation. Okay, so we have identified some really big icons, and our I'm going to read what I wrote in the prompt, which is, often that word is associated with religion, more recently with computer screens. In both cases, the purest definition of the word, according to our inspiration, Madeline Langle, is an item that points to a bigger truth. The icon itself is not the truth. It is not the truth. It represents it, right? So it points to the concept and becomes a shorthand metaphor. When I am thinking about an item from my past that might point to some much bigger truths, there are probably a lot of them. But something meaningful, I'd like you to challenge you to think of an item. And you don't have to have all the stories in your mind right away, but one item might have just jumped in your mind. And for me, it was a typewriter, and the typewriter was a gift from my grandmother. And it came to represent time to myself, time to share my own ideas, and her belief in me. I think Joe might be furiously writing about some of her items. So take a couple minutes to think about something, whether you have it still or not, that you would have saved in a fire. That's the prompt, to think of an item or items that you would have saved in a fire. And you don't have to write the stories that represents right now, but that if you feel like writing something before next week, that'd be wonderful. The second assignment that centers on this idea of icon or metaphor is to choose an item from the news or the current events. And here in Drain, we have a reader board. and it's an electronic reader board, and it sits on the corner of the highway right in the parking lot of the grocery store, and it carries so much weight. I feel like it is a little bit of an icon for the life of the community. We see what's happening, and we even have discussions about it at council meetings. And the reader board becomes this like bigger than life. In fact, I'm thinking it's not even my story, but I understand before there was an electronic reader board that the Vickery family used to climb on a ladder and change out actual letters. They were in charge of that, and they would climb on the ladder multiple times a week and change what it said up there. And so that to me would be something that I could probably think of a lot of, maybe not super personal stories, but that would be the second prompt or idea is there something from your story, from your past, the time period that you're trying to write about, that other people might not know was meaningful to you? Especially if it's younger people that you're writing for. We're all trying to tell a story so it's not lost. And have you seen on the social media when they show like a rotary phone, and younger people have no idea how to operate it. They have no idea that would even, then you have to let it go and it buzzes back around. So I could choose a rotary phone, and that would lead me to writing about party lines and the neighbors who were on the party line, and which neighbors didn't hang up if it wasn't their ring. So I just want to think about that concept of icon, and really hope to hear from you. Send those in to info@ndld.org. And I'm going to send out the little brief description of the 2 assignments. And I don't know if Joe has anything. I don't want to put you on the spot. Did you have anything you wanted to share today?
About what?
Writing. Did you have any? Okay, that was a dangerous question. Did you have any writing from last week or the week before that you want to read aloud? And it's okay if not.
No, I forgot to print out my class 2 handout.
Okay, so that is on me. I think Joe sent me an email, and
No.
But-
When you emailed the handout, I started typing on it and I forgot to print it out.
Mhm.
So it's sitting on my computer.
Okay, so we don't have anything to share today. But again, I'd really encourage you to email it in or to attend in person next week if you are able. Thanks.